The current fiber project, I think I mentioned the last time we met, they were running the backbone. They did finish the backbone, and now they're running what they call the laterals into each of the buildings. So from that backbone into each of the buildings now, they're running that particular fiber. So they've gotten, I think all the schools are done. I know they've gotten to at least two of the towers. I believe they've gotten into the substation. And today they were actually at the annex in the town hall. So they're moving along pretty good right now. Once they finish the lateral installs for the remainder of the buildings, what'll happen is they'll send their connectorization team. So the team that puts all the connectors on the fibers and everything, they'll start coming out now and putting all the connectors on that. And then once that's done, we'll be able to basically start using it. Well, what they'll do first is they'll put a meter on all those fibers and they'll test it, make sure that they have good readings and everything, and they'll validate that each one of those fiber strands is good, and then they basically turn it over to us at that point, and then we can start plugging into it.
I had one thought on that, Keith. Once you get that all up and running, I think it would really be great to bring this Internet Advisory Committee together at the police station and get a demonstration of it and have that videoed and put it out on the internet so that we can really inform people of what this is and what difference it makes.
I think we can do that.
Shauna, do you think that would be a good idea?
I mean, I like the idea. I think Chief will probably not want us doing it at the police station, but is there anything to see though? Like what's
it's a public station.
I agree, but is there anything really to see? Like what would a demo look like?
Well, I mean, in all honesty, it's going to be a fiber patch panel, so you're going to see a bunch of connectors, and at the moment, nothing plugged into them. So it's just really going to be a kind of a cable coming in and a fiber patch panel. I mean, from a cabling perspective, that's all you're going to see.
But I'm talking about once you get it up and running,
yeah,
and you're in communication with all these town offices and schools and so forth, and just to explain it to the committee and thereby explain it to the community.
Yeah, I mean, I think the town meeting voted for this, so we do need to show them something once we get it. So let's, Keith, be thinking about what might look right. We don't want to do it in the middle of the road. We want to do it. Go ahead, Renee.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to interrupt you. I just had a question about that. I mean, are you going to be able to see significant like speeds on the municipal network? Is there a way to do like a speed test to show, okay, this is really how fast this municipal network works, and potentially this would be something that might be a selling point for the further next phase of it to get it to the homes. So I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know if there will be a significant difference and what that difference might be. Maybe Devin can answer that, or Keith.
Yeah, I mean, from internet, our internet connection doesn't change. So that connection is still going to be the same internet connection. It's the intranet, the communication between the buildings that will really benefit there. And it's not so much seeing as just having that redundancy and reliability. We're going to have multiple paths to connect up to different buildings. So those are the kind of things that people don't see, but appreciate when something fails and you have that failover to switch over to something else. So it's better uptime, for the network infrastructure and everything.
So a file transfer from, let's say, the school to the town hall, that won't be significantly faster than sending it out over the internet?
Between those two sites would be significantly faster. Yes.
Yeah, I think we need to look for the opportunity. Like if I think of the ones that have like big files, it'd be like building department or town planners and maybe the schools and the transfers of files. Like I do think we should highlight the benefits that we've seen. So let's think about what that might look like, whether it's a demo or an announcement or something. But I agree with David that we need to be talking about it. We owe town meeting an update on it anyway. And but let's think about how we best showcase that. It might be some kind of files that get transferred faster. It might be I don't know.
Yeah, right now, there's no connection between the town and the school because when the when they moved the high school to the new building, you know, those connections weren't put in.
Right, but what does that mean practically? Like practically, do they have to send over a payroll file once a week and it takes 20 minutes, or do they have to hand deliver a payroll file, or now they get it in 5 seconds? Like that's the kind of thing that we'd want to
Okay.
highlight.
Okay.
Well, and Keith, you could also put up the network diagram. So obviously, you know, Brian's team could get you guys the network diagram, and you could show the ring topology and how it's redundant, because if there's even one cut, you know, that's a benefit that you could show just on diagramming the network out on a, you know, just a KML, you know, file or something like that. So
Yeah.
those are
No,
also ideas.
we need a network diagram, and we need to talk about redundancy, but we also need to like give a real world example of how it
Agreed.
means
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
to real life people.
Yep.
Wait, I just want to put it on local TV so that people can look at it and say, oh my God, what's this? Can I get into this? So it's part of our long-term building process of informing people and building support for this.
Yeah, I think
Thank
it makes a lot of sense to plan for that. Okay, anything else about the current project?
So following once just so for awareness, and once the fiber's put in, we'll be upgrading the core switches that connect to all the buildings, and we'll have multiple switches. So that's in the design planning right now, and that'll connect up from the core network out to all the buildings and out to also the public safety towers. So the other piece of the project that I'm looking at is how to provide better connectivity to all the radio towers in the town, and there's going to be 5 of them that are spread out across all the town. And once we upgrade, those towers to the fiber, they're going to have a better, cleaner, clearer signal, over their radios. And we're getting into putting them in some locations that'll have better coverage of the town. So the expectation is the quality of the radio for police and fire are going to improve over this new network as well.
That's another really good example to highlight. Like if we lose service at some point in town now, or have really spotty service, that would be a really good highlight to show, hey, look, we used to, have scratchy sounding responses, and now we're getting, clear.
And that's what happens right now. I mean, it's very staticky, scratchy. When it rains, it'll just cut out, so you'll lose connectivity to certain parts of town when it rains and that kind of stuff.
Well, especially I'm thinking the public safety. I hope we don't lose connectivity on the public safety system, but if we do, maybe let's not talk about that till it's fixed.
Okay.
Yeah, so along those lines, I mean, I think what David pointed to in terms of like a public service announcement or something that can like hit those key points. It doesn't have to be that long, but obviously an introduction to this. And I don't know if Entry Point or Comtrack actually has like materials that we can use as part of that, build. I think initially when we were talking, we talked about video or some sort of, PSA or some, a promo to at least make people aware of what's going on in the town.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can customize that.
I just add, I hope we'll have the master plan ready to announce, and as a follow-up to this, and say, we're moving ahead with this, and here's our plan to try to do it. Period.
So to answer, yes, Renee, we have all kinds of imagery and content that we can provide you in forms of presentations, video, if you'd like to do that. So yeah, we're happy to work with you on whatever you'd want to put together for not only the select board meetings and being focusing on educating them, but then also obviously the town hall meetings, right, where you have the general public coming. So
I think we need, there's a communication that's hey, this is the project that we just implemented and the great things it's doing for Westport. And then there's the, here's how we can go forward with it. So I think they're both valid, but I think they're separate.
Agreed. Agreed.
So Keith, anything else you wanted to call out on that?
No, that's all.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Entry Point, whoever's leading this conversation now.
Okay. So I think I know how to share on Google, but let me double check this. Okay, can you all see that?
It's coming up.
It's coming.
See your slide.
There you go. Okay. All right. So each of
Well,
you about
can
an
you make
hour.
it a little bit more portrait and maybe a little bigger?
You want me to zoom in a little bit?
Well, because it's showing us really short and long.
How about that? Does that work?
Yeah. Are you at your max height of the?
I
You have a
am.
weirdly shaped monitor.
I am on my max height on my monitor.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
each of you should have received a copy of the draft of the digital access master plan that we've been working on. Okay, it's really divided into some almost an executive summary, kind of an overview of what is the vision that we're trying to accomplish here. What's the overview? What are some of the key questions? And frankly, why should Newport as a community consider doing a fiber to the premise, deployment and network? So those are pretty high level kind of overview type of content. And then we get into a little bit more detail on, okay, what's involved in the feasibility analysis part of this, right? And that's where we start bringing in the financial data that we've calculated based upon. So let me kind of go through this really quick. From a vision statement, we actually pulled this from the main message on the website that was authorized way back when we started by the select board. Now we can change this if you guys want something else in its place, and we can also change the authorship of it if you guys want it to come from the internet, this group, the Internet Committee, for example, right? So that's the kind of feedback we're looking for from this group, is what changes, what additions. David brought up the fact that I know a month or so ago we talked about the concept that right now your multimedia department, I think it's a department, or functionality in the town is essentially funded by Spectrum. And so we want to make a comment of that. We want to make a comment of how that functionality can be enhanced and then funded through this initiative with a fiber deployment. That's something we omitted from this draft. That's a perfect example of the kind of feedback we want from you. Okay. And there's nothing sacred here. So anything goes as far as if you don't like the way something is, is written, if you don't like the way something's organized, by all means, we want your input. That's very important to us. Okay. So then we go into just a brief overview of the key questions. We go into, we list the 8 reasons why municipalities are essentially set up to do this kind of thing and why they should do it. Okay. And then we get into the feasibility analysis. Now, the feasibility analysis, we start off by talking about what is the current spend today. So how much money is being spent just based upon a national average. Now, I can tell you that you are paying above the national average, but so this is a very conservative estimate, but based upon the national average and based upon 7,000 premises, right? At the national average of 6838, that means that on an annual basis, not monthly, excuse me, annual basis, your town is paying $5.7 million for basically internet connectivity to homes and businesses. And if you multiply that number, assuming it will not go up in the next 20 years, but if you multiply that over 20 years, that's $115 million that if you do nothing, you will be spending. It will leave your community and go to Spectrum and Verizon primarily. Okay? So with that as a baseline of understanding, then we start sharing with you a couple of financial points.
Can I just ask a question? So
Yes.
the 7,000 number, I didn't think we had that many subscribers. Is that how many subscribers we have or that we project?
That's how many households and businesses you have in town. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but we don't know but are those how many households that are currently subscribed to cable, to internet?
I'm making the assumption that the vast majority are.
Okay.
Now, that may be an assumption that's not accurate. You guys will need to give me feedback on that if we need to discount that by 10% or whatever. I can tell you that in the large metropolitan areas surrounding Boston area, for example, and even a little bit further south, like and it's like Brockton and New Bedford. Okay, they have quite, they have 20% plus or more very low income families. And so they do have between 15 and 19% that do not have a wired connection. I didn't translate that directly to Westport because I don't think you're in that same situation, but I'm not sure exactly. Do we do a 5% discount? Do we do a...
Renee, do you know how many?
You're on mute, Renee.
Renee, you're muted.
Sorry, I just looked it up. There are 4,520 subscribers as of 2021. That's cable TV subscribers.
Right? Yeah.
Spectrum.
Okay.
So that may not include just internet subscribers. That's just cable TV subscribers. Obviously, we know, Spectrum Charter wants people to bundle their services. So maybe 5,000, maybe more.
Yeah, I know. Like I personally don't have the cable, but I do have the internet. So I think it's probably not 7,000, but probably not 4,000.
Right. So we can be assured of a couple of things. Every one of those 4,500 have internet as part of that package. That's almost a guarantee. I mean, you may have one or two, but the vast majority. Then you're going to have a percentage that have only internet, and those are not going to be reported in your numbers, obviously. And then we have others that just have Verizon and don't have Spectrum at all. So again, whatever that percentage is, I'll look to you to give us guidance. But regardless, if I drop that number down to 6,000 or 6,500, you're still going to be over $100 million over.
Yeah, I get that. I just don't want to get like in the report, because that was the first thing I said is like, I don't think we have 7,000 subscribers. So it sounds like we don't know, but I know I would be more comfortable with a number more like 6,000. And it probably doesn't change at the end of the day, but I'm open to being.
Yeah. So again, that's the kind of feedback we're looking for, because we want you, of all people in this, we want Shauna, David, Renee, Keith, we want all of you to be 100% comfortable with the data and the way it's represented. All right. Okay. But you get the concept we're going for here. And then we share with you based upon our now, let me share with you one other thing. As you know, we had BRE do two network designs for you. Okay. The first is the one I'm showing you here. Okay. Where they went through and they essentially diagrammed or, drafted a fiber to the premise for every premise in town. Okay. So you can see here where you've got kind of main lines. And if I click on one of these, it tells me that's a T3 fiber cable, right? And it tells me it's the conduit, the civil path, so forth and so on. And then so what'll happen is you'll have, see that green square? There's a couple of them there. There's one down here. So that tells you how many huts you would have in your network. So essentially, we have the network core, where your main data center is. That's, basically Keith's office or wherever you have that. I'm not sure. And then you have fiber running out from there to not only municipal buildings and public safety antennas, arrays, and all that good stuff, but you also have them going to these huts. And then from the hut, you branch off to go into the neighborhoods and the business districts. Okay, so every one of these huts, you're servicing anywhere from as low as 500, but as much as 1,500 connections or premises. Okay, and even 2,000 if I don't know what they are specifically in your diagram. We'd have to get into details, but that's what those green dots are. And then from those, you can kind of see how the fiber path goes. And you can also see how their system kind of puts the termination at the home kind of in the middle of the property, right? Now, this is what we call high-level design. So what I'm here to tell you, this is not ready for a contractor to take, like, the contract guys. It's not ready for them to take and then go build your network. There's additional things. So for example, their system automatically put a fiber path going to the middle of this lot. But from what I can see, there's no building on that lot right now, right? So that one would be pulled back to here, and it would be essentially stubbed here for future. If there is a home that's put on that, or some kind of building, then that would have a fiber kind of terminated at the road, ready to be put in. So that's kind of an example of where, when you get to the next level of design, you go through these things one at a time. You say, okay, yeah, let's pull that back to here because we don't need it for the building right now, because there's no building, right? That's an example. Another example would be that Keith may look at this and say, oh, where am I here? Keith may look at this and say, you know what? That's not a good place for a hut, right? Because their software just placed it where it kind of made sense from a design perspective. But so there's going to be a lot of times where you say, you know what? That's not, number one, the city doesn't own that property. Number two, it's not a great location. So we want to move this down to here or up to here or wherever, right? And then they'll drag that up to there, and then their software will remake all the new connections and recalculate all of the footages automatically, right? So that's kind of next level. So this is high level. So don't get thrown off by the fact. I'll give you probably the most glaring example of what would have to change. Okay, is Biare software put your main line going across the bay here. They took it across the bridge, and we know that's not possible, right? Because that's a bridge that goes up and down, right? So that's going to have to be moved. That's just an example. So don't get thrown off by those things, because we know there's inaccuracies in the plan. But what it gives us is it gives us a list of building materials, number of huts, number of junction boxes, length of conduit and fiber, those kind of things that we can use for financial analysis and financial pro formas. Because even if I change the fiber going from here to going somehow, across the bay here or somewhere, it's not going to significantly change the fiber count. It's not going to significantly change the feet of conduit that's needed, those kind of things, right? So I want to show you this because this is something that is very, very valuable to Westport as a community, because this is the kind of design that if you decide to go for either state or federal grant opportunities and funding, they're going to want to see this level of design. Okay. And you guys are already done with that, check that box off. Okay. The other thing I want to show you while I've got you on the maps, we also had them do the exercise, if you remember, where we identified the specific low-income housing facilities in town. And what would that look like if we built a fiber to those facilities? And so this is this is the diagram that they came up with, where you've got kind of the main line here, and then you come off from there and connect to the housing. Now, again, in this case, you may say, well, no, it's more efficient to come up here and go straight across that way. And if that's the case, they would change that. Keith, what this does not implicate or have it, this does not have your current network overlaid on top of it, right? So that will also have implications, because if you are able to use the core backbone that you're implementing right now, which we believe you will be able to use some of that asset and fiber for your backbone, for the fiber of the premise or the fiber to the facility in this case, then that's going to change maybe some of the paths. And it's certainly going to lower the amount of fiber and conduit and everything else that you need, because you already have that asset. So again, what I'm trying to say is this is not a level where someone could take this and start building a network. This is called high level or feasibility design. And it doesn't kind of overlay and mesh all those three together to create the actual build plan. That's down the road a little further if you decide as a community you want to move down this path. Okay, fair enough. Any questions about this before we move back to the document? Okay, so
Let
Keith,
me just make one comment.
please, David.
I think that Keith could get together with Jim Hartnett, who knows the makeup of this town very well, and look at that and try to rejigger this. I think there's too much omission of things up at the north end that Keith has already been focusing on, where there's very dense population and small properties and settlement. And so I think they could work out an improved design from that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And that's a process we would anticipate happening. Yeah. So right now, you do have obviously a lot more concentration in the north, like David said, than you do down in the south here. There's much larger, more spread out properties.
And just to add, Keith has already arranged for 2 loops going out through that north end area to provide extensions from the backbone. So
exactly, yeah.
we're
And
underway.
that's what I was saying. Those diagrams are not overlaid here yet. So anyway, okay, fantastic. So Keith, now that these are done, if you would like, if we can set you an account in this software that I'm viewing this in,
Yeah.
and we can give you access to these drawings, and you can download. You can go in here and export KML files, shape files, whatever, because technically you guys own these files, right? You own this data. So, okay.
So just to so Keith needs to do that, but these are just like the next level of drawing. As we progress, then they get more and more specific, right? Like I know David talked about some tweaks made. We talked about working with Jim. I just want to make sure we're only doing that at the right time when it makes sense that we need to do that. Because right now what we're trying to do is get a report back to people about potential cost and things like that. So I really I appreciate you showing us this, because I think this is going to be very valuable to us. But I think the focus isn't so much on the specifics here as what we're getting that's feeding into the report.
100% agree with that statement. One last thing I want to show you here. So if I go into files, I'm able to download what's called a bill of materials list. So from the design, the software automatically creates this document right here, which is essentially, I'll give it a minute to download. There we go. which is essentially a list of all the little tiny connectors, fiber strands, feet of fiber cabling. Okay, so it's very, very specific down to how many huts, how many junction boxes, how much feet of conduit, how much feet of fiber, what types of fiber. They're all listed here. It's very, very detailed, the numbers and the counts involved in building the network that we just saw. This is what Entry Point took this bill of materials, and we load that into a series of financial calculators that we've created to come up with the budgets that you see here. So in the financial analysis or the feasibility analysis, we're showing you two tables, okay? The first table is, depending upon if you build your network hanging it on telephone poles and power poles, right? So you hang it aerially. That's one cost to the consumer, okay, of $34.17. If you bury it in conduit, that's a little more expensive from a construction perspective, from a deployment perspective. So that increases the cost to the consumer, right? So we list first and foremost, if you move forward, if you deploy a town-wide network, and if 60% of your town signs up for it, so 60% of the subscriber base that's potential, okay, it will essentially cost a homeowner or a business operator, as the case may be, either $65 or $78 to have gigabit connectivity, fiber gig connectivity to their homes. Okay, so that's where we're starting from. Now that first number, that infrastructure cost, that then is shown down here as the specific cost per premise, right? Add an estimated subscriber rate of 60%. And again, if you do it aerially, it's going to cost, from a capital investment perspective, the entire town collectively, $22.5 million. Okay, to deploy it as you know, that's fiber terminated in front of every home and business, and then 60% of them taking it from the curb into their property and into their home or business. Okay. Or if you do it underground, it's just under $31 million. Okay. So these are numbers that are, we like to err on the side of a conservative. You won't know these hard numbers until you do an RFP process for the actual supplies and the actual construction bids. But we're confident this is a very conservative projection. Jeff, would you say anything in addition to that?
No, I think what Shauna said is right. This is an iterative process. We think these numbers are within 10% of accurate, but there is some variability at this stage of the process. And as you go forward, until you get a quote from a contractor, you can't harden these numbers. Until you get a quote from the supply chain, you can't harden these numbers. But we think it provides the information needed at this stage.
Okay. And then we also give you a table that illustrates the effective take rate. So our baseline is 60% at 100% aerial deployment, which is the 5334 that you see up here per premise. That's the capital cost for that property, if you want to look at it that way. But as your take rate goes up or down accordingly, this just simply shows you what what happens to that $5,300 price tag. So as you hit a 65%, that drops down to 49. As you hit a 75, it drops down to 44. You know, so you kind of get an idea of up or down, right? If you only get a 45% take rate, that means each home, if you will, from an allocation perspective, you may not treat it this way, but from an allocation perspective, the capital cost for that home is $6,800, right? And then that helps you gauge where is the threshold where everybody in town is comfortable with, right? Is it at 40%, or no, we've got to have a minimum of 55%, or we don't move forward. So this helps you gauge where that is. But again, keep in mind, going to the very beginning, well, I'll show you in a minute what you're paying today. But keep in mind, these numbers here at 60%, this baseline here, whoops, and this capital expenditure would, you know, whether it's on this side or this side of the line or somewhere in between, calculates into either $65 or $78 respectively per month. Okay.
So David had a question.
Yes, please.
I just would say, given the amount of rock that we have in this town immediately under the surface, I think it makes sense to assume, and the fact that we own space on the poles, that it would make sense to assume that it will all be aerial. And I'd just throw that out. If anybody has any reasons to challenge that, I'd invite it. But I think your assumption should go forward assuming aerial, and don't worry about the underground.
Well, and we were under the same impression, David, but I want to get Keith's input on this. We're under the same impression. That's why we based this off of the aerial number up here instead of off of the buried number.
Well, I think that's the right way to go.
I think that's the way to go, but like I know my neighborhood is all underground, so we have kind of, and I know the newer neighborhoods aren't. So you have the aerial poles coming down Charlotte White, but then it's underground. So maybe that's where it comes in with the tweaking.
So there'd be some percentage that would be underground, like our neighborhoods, you know, where they have underground utilities, they would come aerial and then go underground. So that might be 10%, it might be 15%, you know, we'd have to sort that out once we get into the more detailed plan there.
I think the planning this is fine.
And if you want us to show or reflect a third kind of combined, and you give us the percentage, we can do that in our next version, our next draft, if you guys want us to do that.
I don't know how we get good numbers for that anyway, so.
Yeah, it would kind of be a gut check, right? Like Keith was saying, maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 15%. So you'd kind of have to put a stake in the ground and say, okay, this is what we're going to base this analysis off of. So.
Yeah, like I said, it could be either one. But I guess my comment to these numbers is what we talked about earlier, the number of, you know, premises in town. We said we didn't think it was quite 7,000. If it was 6,000, then these would get adjusted accordingly, right? So whatever that number is.
Yes. Now I can tell you that this analysis, the bill of materials, came back with 7,011 premises. So that's what we base this on. Now, again, remember that I just showed you the drawing, and one of those premises doesn't have a building on it, right? But we are anticipating that you will still stub a fiber in front of that property for potential future necessity if there's ever a building put on that piece of property. So we are covering, when we talk about deploying fiber to every premise, we're not exaggerating. We're saying you're going to put a stubbed piece of fiber in front of every home and every business and every vacant lot, because in the future there may be a building on that lot and they'll want access to the fiber, and you're already 90% done with that. All you got to do is trench in front of the house as they're building it, and you're done. So that's what we're modeling here, if that makes sense.
So that's why you might want to keep that first number at 7,000 and not try to reduce it, because you're basing 7,000 potential premises is based on the lots and stuff. It's not based on current subscriber rates.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So again, we can redefine that table, or we can lower it saying, we think it's a little bit less than 100% right now. So, but that's the value that BRE returned to us, which also, just as an FYI, Shauna, when the select board approved the BRE budget, I think they approved like $9,500 or something, because we weren't quite sure. We thought maybe 9,000. Well, we came in way under that. We came in at 7,011. So that's what you should expect from a cost perspective, just as an FYI. Okay. Then we move on from there. Now, let me also say one thing about.
Before you move on, did anybody else have anything on that section?
Okay, yeah. So
Right.
I want to make one statement for David's benefit. Being the Harvard finance professor in the room, right? We used to include, and we can provide these to you if you would like. We used to include balance sheet, income statements, build plans, maintenance and operation schedules, and cost modeling. All of the detail behind where did we come up with $21.50 a month for maintenance and operations cost, right? Oh, sorry, hang on, my computer's rethinking here. Should be back a moment. There you go. Okay. And we can provide that detail to you if you'd like. We used to include it automatically in the plan, and it became a source of confusion to a lot of people because a lot of people aren't accustomed to reading and understanding balance sheet and income statements and that kind of thing. But if David would like to kind of go through all that in great detail, we're happy to provide that to you. So
Yeah, that's not what I'm suggesting. All I'm suggesting is that we have a clear provision for financial support for the existing services that many that are highly valued, I think, by the town, of recording the meetings of the various boards and committees and other intertown internet support. And I think to help sell this program, we need that because there are people who are invested in that who think, well, we're going to lose all this if we give up our spectrum system.
agreed.
And I want
Agreed.
to say we're going to keep that and we're going to pay for it, and it's going to be a specific provision under this program. That's all I'm saying.
No, that's perfect feedback. And we actually have a reserve fund built into this 2150, but I think we need to call that out specifically, right, in the actual narrative of the document. So we'll definitely take that as a notation for our next draft. Okay, so after we get through the high level financial and feasibility.
Kevin, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm just thinking about more of the number of premise. So when you had the spreadsheet there that listed the percentages, and I'm thinking, we said 7,000, and that makes sense. If we're bringing fiber to every single premise, that's potentially buildable. But how does that affect the percentage take rate if you currently only have, say, 5,000 people that are on there now? So you're only going to get 5,000 people that are going to be potentially signing up. So it's not a percentage of the 7,000. It might be a percentage of the 5,000, right? So I just want to make sure that we capture that accurately there.
Yeah, so what we did right now was essentially the numbers we're using, we're just doing a baseline of 60% based upon the 7,011 figure. So that comes to a 4207. If we need to adjust that because you think that's a little aggressive or too high, we can certainly do that.
Yeah, I
So
think
again,
he's right. I think that's a good insight that we need to, for this modeling, we need to go off of the existing occupied structures,
right.
not off of the number of lots in town.
So the question is, Keith, you have those numbers and that data, because we're happy to recalculate it based on those, but this is what came off of the building materials, off the design. So
Yeah, and we heard Renee say earlier, that we know that there's about 4,500 cable TV providers, and we suspect there's probably a few more that are just internet. So, does that make it 5,000 or 5,500? I would say somewhere in that range.
Well,
probably.
so I would
5.
actually not go off of that. I would go off of how many, I mean, I'm assuming you guys have the assessor roles and you know what properties are occupied and which ones don't have occupation to them. I don't know if that's an assessor's office perspective, but that's probably a better way to go, is how many properties in town do not have, a home or business on it. They're a blank, they're a vacant piece of property.
Yeah,
My guess is-
I think I thought I sent that out to you guys. You were on it when we were discussing the BRE numbers there. I think it showed the occupied and the potential buildable lots on there.
Okay, so I'll have to go back and look at that. I mean, you probably did. It just was a while
I can
ago.
send it again. Okay.
All right, that'd be great. So yeah, we can adjust that if needs be. Then we get into actually the market assessment, market research. So here's what we discovered. So we know that Spectrum is your cable company, and we know that Verizon is your incumbent telephone company, right? So the way that I do this market research is I actually I open up a Google map of Westport, and I select 5 to 6 addresses randomly off of a Google map. One in the north, one in the south, east, west, and kind of in the central area. And then I look up on the website of each of these companies, and I do a search on those addresses. And I see what data, what options as far as plans and costs that they're advertising come back for that piece of property, okay, for that specific home or business. And then I record all of the available plans and the associated pricing that they're listing as the cost of those plans. So in Westport, from a Spectrum perspective, there were 3 plans that were advertised and offered on their website. 200 by 10, 400 by 20, and 940 by 50. So that's 200 megabits download by 10 megabits upload, and you guys get the idea, right? Now, a couple of things that I will share with you. Every time, without exception, the cable companies and the telephone companies, no matter where we do this research in the country, they always have this disclaimer right here, that availability depends on location, not available in all areas. Okay, so in fact, we see most commonly that there are going to be neighborhoods throughout Westport that likely cannot get some of these packages, or maybe not even be able to get Spectrum service at all. Okay, but this is what is returned as far as what they're advertising availability, and then you have to call them with your address to find out which of these packages is actually available, if any at all. We don't take that step in our research, right? We just said, what are they advertising as available? Okay. Obviously, this is a shared network, so speeds are not guaranteed. They are not symmetrical, meaning your download and upload speeds are different. They advertise a 12-month kind of a promotional rate, if you will, for new customers. So they give that to you for $50, $70, and $90 respectively. But then after 12 months, it goes up to $75, $95, and $115 respectively. So just to put this perspective, okay, this is the closest package of all of the market assessment we could find that would even come close to a fiber to the premise municipal network offering. Because we're talking about 1 gigabit, so 1,000 megs by 1,000 megabits, okay, for $63. And they're at $115, $90 for the first year, for $940, which is close, by 50 upload. Okay, so we offer 20x on the download speed, or upload speed rather. And of course, you're at about not quite half. Okay, just about half, close to half of the cost. So And then Verizon, bless their hearts, they're struggling, as I think everybody knows. They offer anywhere from 1.1 to 3 megs download and 0.5 upload on their DSL platform. And then there are a couple of parts of town where they actually offer a 4G LTE wireless hotspot that'll get you up to 25 megabits download. And then the cost of those, this may be a little surprising to you, but the LTE wireless is $60 a month. But the 1 megabit to 3 megabits download speed for the DSL coverage is actually $75 a month. Now, the reason it's 75, and I listed it, the internet portion is $40, but they require you to also sign up for a phone line, which costs you an additional $35. That's in the small print. So your DSL cost, no matter where your speeds are in this range, is $75. And then if you live in a specific neighborhoods that has 4G LTE coverage, you can get that for $60 for 25 megabits. That's why the majority of your internet users, when they have the ability, you can see why Comcast or why Spectrum is winning this battle between the two companies. Okay. Any questions about this on the residential side? Okay. Then on the business side, again, going back to compare resident from business, they're very, very comparable packages from a speed perspective. So they start at 200 by 20, which is the same. Instead of 400, they go to 600 for business, and then they go to their standard 940 as the top end. But the thing I want you to understand and notice is their promo price is considerably more money for business over residential. Okay. So in a business environment, you are starting out paying $65, $115 for 600, and then $165. They don't disclose on their website their standard pricing, so we don't know what that is, but they do disclose their promotional first 12 months. Okay. So one thing I want to point out to you is it used to be that businesses consumed more data. And therefore, that was the excuse of the incumbent operators to charge more for business service than a home service. The reality in today's world, the average home consumes vastly more data on a monthly basis than the businesses do because they have kids at home streaming Netflix and Disney and Hulu. Okay. And those are far more intensive than 99% of the business processes and data utilization needs on a monthly basis. So you would think it would be the reverse, but it's not. And the reason it's not is because they feel that they can just simply charge businesses more because they're businesses. Okay. We believe that's one of the fundamental significant advantages of a municipal network infrastructure like we're proposing and recommending, is because you don't have to charge your businesses more. You can charge your businesses the same base rates or very close to them, and then spur economic growth because your business costs just went down significantly over what they have been historically and what they are today. Okay.
So one comment there, Devin, is that, so, the city, and this document talks about the importance of the neutral host. The town is functioning as a neutral host. We don't control what the ISPs do. We do believe the market. So the ISPs are used to charging businesses more, even if it's a hair salon with one employee, it's a business. So we're going to double the rates. That will still happen for some period of time. We think technology is going to fix that, because this can all be automated. But we, in an open access network, the neutral host doesn't control what the ISPs charge. They just provide a platform for competition. So there's just one piece that's still, you're vulnerable to what the ISPs are going to charge.
Yep. Okay. And then Verizon Business, a little bit better. They have really focused on their the wireless service for business. So they still have the 3 megabits download by half a meg upload DSL service for some of the areas in town for businesses. They charge $69 for the first year, $79 the second year, $89 the third year, and $99 the fourth year, which is just highway robbery, in my opinion, for a 3 by half meg upload. But then they also offer 4G LTE wireless hotspots for most of the businesses in town. And that is a 10, a 25, or a 50 meg. But you do pay dearly for those rates, right? I mean, you're up to $230 by the fourth year. So again, because it's a business, they definitely charge more. So then let's talk about speed tests. So I don't know how familiar you are with MLabs, but MLabs is they are a company that are they a federal agency or they work with federal agency? I can't remember, Jeff.
They're not a federal agency. They're quasi-governmental, but
Quasi,
it's a reasonable job.
And every time anyone does a speed test in the United States, MLab captures that in their database. Okay. And then they give us tools and the ability, when I say us, I mean the world, the community, not Entry Point, the ability to search those data and get the results of those speed tests. So between January 1st of 2021 and December 31st, 2020, so all of last year, okay, in Westport, there were 48,728 speed tests conducted. Okay. And the results are as follows. Down here, it shows it broken out by Charter, Spectrum, and by MCI, which is basically Verizon Wireless, or Verizon and Verizon DSL and Wireless. Okay. The old Verizon business. Okay. So that's what returned. Those are what make up the 48,000. The results are this. The average speed delivered by Spectrum Charter in Westport was 47 megs, 47.5 megabits download speed, and just under 7 megabits upload speed.
So Devin, one comment there. So the limitation of this data, so I think the sample size is good, but the limitation is if I'm at my house and I run a speed test over the wireless system, I get a vastly different result than if I tether in. If I plug in my machine through an Ethernet cable, I get a significantly better result. And the Spectrum would complain about this data for this reason, and it's a legitimate complaint. This reflects the actual experience of people. It doesn't tell you what's going on to drive this result. And a lot of people don't know. They don't know, why am I getting these sort of meager speeds? And it could be the wireless network in their home. It could be the laptop they're on. It could be a variety of things. So this doesn't say this is what Spectrum's delivering to the home. It says this is what this sample size is actually experiencing, but there could be variables other than Spectrum that explain the data.
Correct. So we just want you to know this is a single data point as you're evaluating everything, right? And it's only a single data point.
So you're just trying to show here that what we're actually getting versus what we might get in the future, right? So we've talked about this before. So I think
Yep. So that's your speed test data. And then the survey, you guys have already conducted the survey and done the analysis. So what I did is I took the write-up that David sent me and I put some of the highlights of his write-up in your report. Okay. So again, if there are certain parts of his write-up that you would prefer putting in here or adding to this, be happy to do that. I just read through it and I took what I thought were some of the most salient and relevant points of the analysis that you already had done before we partnered up with you. Okay, but that's identified right here.
I have nothing to add to that. I think it's fine.
Okay, great. It was very well written, David. Very well written. Very good analysis, actually. Okay, and then on next step, I'm going to let Jeff kind of talk about next steps. But that's the next section. So, Jeff, do you want to cover this?
So sorry I was late. I couldn't get out of another meeting. Where are we at on time, Shauna? Are we don't want to run over.
Yeah,
We're all kind of
probably-
winding down, so I'd say maybe 15, 20 minutes tops. So.
Okay. So, I think that we don't need to go through. You've got the document. You can read these. I think it's important for you to see what we're doing structurally with the report. Next steps, we've got these bullets, these 8 bullets here, which basically outline, what we then detail below that. The key thing there is this is a process, and ultimately what will matter is, we're very confident that you would see enormous benefit from building a town-owned network. What we don't know is the take rate. So feasibility ultimately is going to be a function of take rate. And we know we can create the value proposition, help you create the value proposition. The question is, can we communicate it to the town people, and will they pay attention? Is this a big enough issue that people are going to stop their busy lives and pay attention to this issue? And I think a lot of you believe the value proposition is there to move forward. Ultimately, I think this is going to rise or fall on how are we going to help every household in Westport understand the value proposition at a level, talk to them in a way that they can make sense of it, and then stop their busy lives to take an action.
Look, so I know my first reaction here to what I saw, maybe I just need to digest it, is that as a homeowner who uses the internet, my costs are going to be about the same. I'm going to get a high speed, but I'm going to pay about what I'm paying now is kind of what I'm taking out of that. So, and maybe, am I wrong there?
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is, I think that's right, Shauna, that today your costs are not going to be dramatically different. You're probably, our lowest network we've built is $20 less than this one, but it's a dense, it's 4 by 4 miles, suburbia, homes are, every 75 feet. You're semi-rural with a lot of rock in the ground, and that explains why your costs are higher. What would happen over time is your current options are going to get worse over time, meaning the value that you get from those are going to deteriorate over time. And if the city does it, the value proposition is going to improve over time. And part of that is, if you treat it like a utility, once the infrastructure gets paid off, your costs are going to immediately drop 35% once the infrastructure piece is paid off.
What are you talking about? You're talking about 30-year bond or 20-year bond?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long-term proposition.
And you haven't included what David was talking about, like if we want to put like I don't know what the number is, but like a $5 surcharge for community service television or whatever, right? So we haven't included that. I think there is still value here, but it's not so compelling that I'm like, we have to go get this tomorrow, right? And no one can predict the future and what's happening with, some of the other wireless technologies either, right?
Yep, it's true.
So
Yep.
Again, I was hoping for a little bit, like a really solid story here, but maybe I just have to look a little bit more.
Yeah, we want you to read it. I think the first section is, why should Westport do this? And I think those reasons are the right reasons on why Westport should do it. You're going to have to tell us whether that's compelling or not for you.
So I would like to see the numbers adjusted to whatever our current households are, because I don't think 7,000 is the right number. So, and I don't know if there's a way to change the BRE report, because BRE's got for 7,000, right? So you've got the cost for 7,000. So maybe it isn't that much. If you take 1,000 out of there, maybe some of those costs. I don't know I don't know how you might tweak that, but I think if we say 7,000 and that's not really, we don't really have buildings there, then you're automatically, like Keith was saying, your take rate is really under pressure at that point.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that's a good insight and an important edit. John, I think
John Alden's got his hand raised here.
John, you're on mute. Sean's still there?
maybe John meant to exit and he raised his hand.
We gave him a chance. Anybody else have anything for Jeff before Jeff move on?
Yeah, I think one important thing is this network would be significantly more reliable for everybody. I think the way it works with cable is people that are close to the node have good performance, a fairly reliable outcome, but people that are at the other end of the node don't. But these things are, again, it's going to rise and fall with take rate, and I think a lot of it is going to depend on whether people want a local network as opposed to a national company. Do they want any local control over this thing? Yeah, you're going to get something close. When you do speed tests on this network, you're going to pretty consistently get around 900 by 900. Everybody will.
I think David had a question.
David. Are you on mute, David?
Yeah, you're on mute.
He's not on mute, but we can't hear him. Those darn hearing aids again, David. No, we can't hear you. No. Nope. John, are you back? David, you're talking, but we can't hear you. David. John, do you have a question? Can you talk? John, you're on mute. I can see that.
There you go.
There you
Now
go.
can you hear me?
I can hear
Okay.
you. Let's take you.
All righty. Just a real quick observation. My experiences in this go back many, many years. The company I operated started out at the tail end of the MillNet era, and we worked all the way up until I sold the company about 5 years ago. And I'm just kind of curious. We experienced all the technologies going up like you folks have too. One technology you're not looking at, though, is what Bezos and what our good friend Tesla are doing with their Starlink packages and the outer space satellite situations. I'm not sure how close they are to actually beaming, but you got to put the two richest men in the world here. You got to give them some credibility that they could establish internet proximity to our area for a hell of a lot less money than any of the technologies we're talking about now. I always say that we may be premature on going in and developing an entire fiber network in-ground type system when 3-4 years from now we may have the option of going Starlink and beaming directly into the homes of everybody who wants to sign up for it. And I can assure you that Bezos and Tesla understand the market, how to bill for it, how to make money on it. So I don't know if you've thought about that process, and I'm not sure that it's appropriate at this point in time to be thinking about it, but you got to take those guys seriously and what they're trying to accomplish.
Jeff, do you want to respond to that or you want me to?
Yeah, never bet against Elon Musk. And Bezos too. I don't think Bezos is doing what Elon Musk is doing. Bezos is focused on Mars like Elon Musk, but I don't think he's focused on a satellite network sort of blanketing the earth. But I don't think Elon Musk is going after a suburban market. And so, I would say you're semi-rural, and Starlink may make sense for some people in Westport, but he's not going after Chicago and Los Angeles and Denver. And in reality, he's never going to compete from space. He's just not. He knows it. He's not going to compete against fiber optics because he knows the physics. He's going after the places in the world where it's hard to get fiber to. That's his market. And the other thing is, just from a national security point of view, we don't want our internet to be up in the sky. We don't. Because if there is a war, people can shoot those things out of the sky. And so I think there's a fit in the market for what Elon Musk is doing, but there's nobody in the industry, and I would include Elon Musk, who thinks that the future of the internet is low orbit satellite. People don't think that. It's not going to compete against fiber optics for a lot of reasons.
Well, and he's actually made that statement that he knows from a capacity and from a physics perspective, it is not even close to the capacity level that we're going to need in the future. But he's trying to get those people that can't get it, right? They're either on the top of the mountain, or they're in a third world country that frankly doesn't have good infrastructure. And he's even stated that's the goal. I will tell you, going back to Jeff and the security implications, one of the things that just happened in January was 40 of the satellites on the Starlink system got fried by sun flares and basically fell out of the sky, and it caused all kinds of disruption to that network. And they're still in beta. They're still in testing mode. So I think there are significant advantages to it, but like Jeff said, it's not designed to take over traditional fiber infrastructure, not where it's feasible and available. So, anyway.
David, you want to try again? Now you're on mute.
Yeah, now
David,
You're not on mute, but we can't hear you.
I'm sorry. David just sent an email. I'm not sure if you guys have checked it. He's just suggesting that we review the draft report and come back next week to discuss it.
Excellent. Devin or Jeff, is there anything else you want to cover before we kind of take this back and maybe regroup in 2 weeks, maybe?
No. We'll love your feedback. Please make lots of notes. Share with us what you come up with as far as questions or suggestions for improving the data and the information report. So.
Hey, is there anything else anybody wanted to cover before we go? Is 2 weeks the right time to meet? 2 weeks from now?
Yeah, I have that scheduled on the calendar. So I have 2 weeks out. I think I have 2 more meetings at least on the calendar. So 2 weeks out and then 4 weeks out.
So in 2 weeks, we can see the updated report, and then we can talk about whether we're ready to present to the select board.
Yeah, so in the next week, if you want to get us all of your feedback, then we can incorporate that and have another draft ready for our next meeting.
Keith, did you have anything else?
I just wanted to just briefly talk to the discussion about the fiber and the the space links and that. I mean, one of the things we talked about was the physics of the fiber. If we look at current internet connections now, we're talking about 1 gigabit with the fiber and that. But the fact of the matter is the technology isn't standing still. So that over that same fiber connection, in the future you'll have 5 gigs and 10 gigs and 20 gigs. So those, if you're just looking at the present, you might be able to argue, well, something else is coming along that could compete, but fiber and that technology isn't standing still either. That's going to continue to advance and progress and become better. And as homes start to consume more and more information, they're going to need that higher bandwidth, even above the 1 gig. You know, when you start having, they start talking about artificial intelligence and all of that. So I think and that's the hard part to explain to people. I mean, because you're right. I mean, people look at the bill, what they have today and what we're offering, but it's that future capability that's really, you know, why we want to look at doing this and moving in that direction. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thanks, Keith. And just so you know, and I don't expect you to actually have gotten to this yet, but starting on page 22 of the report, we do a media comparison, and we do actually have satellite technology as part of the analysis that we do there. So we do cover DSL, we cover coaxial cable, we cover fiber optics, wireless internet, that's like point-to-point wireless, 5G, and satellites. So you've got the data there. You can do the evaluation, and we kind of do a comparison. So, and that's a big part of what we identify as the strength of fiber, right? Because right now commercially, there's all kinds of fiber networks that do 25 terabytes symmetrical, and they've tested up to 159 terabytes.
Bits.
That's 159 million megabits. So that's just future stuff. But
Yeah. Thanks for your patience while we got this all pulled together. 2 weeks works for us. And if you want to meet next week, we can, but we'll plan on 2 weeks and look forward to your feedback.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody.